The following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
I am back, and you are comfortably zoned with me, the Zigzag Man, in Alameda, California, right across the bay from San Francisco in the northern part of the greatest state in the nation, and my guest will agree with me on that. I have this wonderful segment, Two Jews, Three Opinions, that the Jew in question is Howie Gordon. How you doing?
Well, I haven't been referred to as the Jew in a long time, but it's always great to identify with the tribe.
Just great to be on top of the ground just for one more day, but the kids don't ever come to visit.
Oi, they don't call nothing.
Nothing. Howie, I thought you are the first to know that it is absolutely official. Sports Byline USA and the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network have teamed up to produce Lenny Randall's Hot Corner.
Wow.
It's going to be on 200 some odd affiliates, Series FM, XFM, all these things that I didn't even know existed in a lot of ways. One of them, though, that I did know existed was Armed Forces Radio.
Yeah.
And proud to be on that as for a number of reasons. Number one reason is a lot of people will be listening in places that don't provide very much entertainment.
Yeah.
So anything we can do to cheer up folks who are estranged from their way of life and are in bumfuck Egypt or this, that, and the other thing, it'll be nice to entertain those people from the standpoint of my being a former GI. I wasn't stationed anywhere but California, but that's another thing. I got to know a lot of people that were stationed at that time was the Vietnam era, and what they went through, what veterans continue to go through from that era, how they suffer with the effects of Agent Orange, of PDT, or whatever. Stuff we didn't even know existed back then.
Yeah.
So cheering up, or at least taking people's mind off of their plight, as radio will do, because it is the theater of the mind, and conversely, TV is the theater of the mindless. I don't remember who said that originally, but I'm proud to be.
I would vote for Newton Minow. Do you remember Newton Minow?
It was, yes, Newton Minow.
He referred to TV as the vast wasteland, which was repeated by endless journalists. It became one of the great criticisms in the 1960s of what was on the airwaves, the banality of the Donna Reed show, etc. Multiplied by everything.
Oh, yes. And when we grew up, radio was absolutely spellbinding.
Well, I miss that.
Yes.
I was born in 48, exactly 69 and 365th days years ago.
All right.
Tomorrow was my 70th birthday, is what I'm trying to say. That I awoke to TV. Radio was not an event in our house. The TV was, and it was brand new and a big box and a big event to have one, and a lot of people didn't. And but I missed all the radio generation of entertainment.
And it was interesting to see how some of the radio performers transcended. And Jack Benny is one that comes to mind, right?
Yeah. No,
the way how all the Burns and Allen, they were all radio people, and some had the persona for TV, some didn't.
Well, it's interesting. I had just recently read the biography of Ed McMahon. And like the same with silent movies versus talkies, when something first begins, whoever is successful in the older medium tends to poo-poo the new one because they've already achieved what they wanted to achieve working in the old, so they want to see it as a flash in the pan that's going to go away. And consequently, in television, working as an entry with the beginning of the genre, McMahon got all these jobs because nobody wanted them. He became a television show host himself, and I think Philadelphia was his hometown. And he had 4 or 5 different jobs on different shows because there was no competition. Nobody knew what it was. They were inventing it as they went. And he managed to prosper because there was no competition in the beginning. So there's a lot of people who just didn't think television was going to make it, and it would be a drop in prestige and status to get involved with this flim-flam kind of thing, and they didn't go for it. And it's only as it developed and became profitable that the Burns and Allenses and the people who were successful in radio made the transition to the TV.
Oh, they didn't jump in right away.
No, it was considered a demotion. It'd be like podcasting versus broadcasting. Nowadays, although that transition is already pretty well along, where the internet is redefining show business now.
Happily so, or I'd be talking.
Yes, because you're on the new side of things.
Yeah, like a movie star that we know talks to chairs. The one thing about being on a national show, a radio show, as opposed to podcasting, all the things that I got into podcasting for originally, there are restrictions in radio. There's a time clock, and there's what you can say and what you can't say, and rightfully so, because sponsors provide it. If in podcasting, you get sponsors that if one does get sponsors, you get sponsors who meet your ideology. But I'm sure craft food doesn't want to hear what I think about the unholy trinity of the church, big business, and the government.
Well, along comes the death of creativity with the money. There was a wonderful moment in my college years. Go ahead.
In producing this show, as I have been the one for Sports Byline, I have been faced with just that on so many different levels. Who to deal with, who to talk to. This one thinks this way, this way. If you look at all the people on the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network, we are all in tune ideology-wise, with a very, very few exceptions, and we're able to skirt political stuff in our interactions. But once there becomes money involved, and you deal with people who you wouldn't be dealing with under certain circumstances, it changes everything, and that's what's wrong with artists, liberal arts. It just the whole thing, it just doesn't work because you got to bring capitalism into it.
Well, one of the things that I'm thinking about today, I just went through this. There's a colleague of mine from the porn days, a woman, who, well, I don't want to identify her because I think she's as dumb as a sack of hammers is the bottom line. And she is a heavy, heavy right-wing proselytizer, and everything right-wing is good, everything liberal is dumb, black and white, and unrelenting broadcaster in Facebook where I see her. And I can't listen to it anymore. I just ended up deleting at least her shit. It's not going to appear on my site anymore. But my personal feeling about right now...
People are entitled to their opinion, but when they put it on your site, on one...
Yeah, I don't need to help further that madness. But that's what I wanted to say is I'm more and more dealing with the problem now that we have dial your own facts and dial your own news, that we have people trying to make decisions all over this country being fed only one half the story or one side of the story. And that's not going to work. That's not going to work. You know, if
it doesn't.
I think I told you the story.
So polarized that neither of us can see any good on the other pole.
Well, America won't work. America can't work that way. We've got to have something where we're dealing with the same kind of information instead of everything you say is bad and everything I say is good. You can't run a democracy that way. There's no consensus because the whole thing is about either us or them, and then you have civil war, which is somewhere I really hope we're not headed.
I don't think there'll be a civil war, but I think California, some way down the line, will find a way of seceding from this nation.
Well, that's civil war. There you go. I mean, that's the launch.
I don't know. Yeah.
It gets down to if that happens, if that crack, that fissure happens, it gets down to who controls the army. And that's just the nature of power, and it'll always be that way. And I hope we're not destined to go there. I still like the idea that America is a place where people can have different opinions and work them out. The Compromise of 1820. I mean, America has a history of compromising conflicting ideas with only one major break in the system, and that was in 1860. And that was the worst war we've ever been in terms of the number of casualties.
Well, how about a war that split this country? The Vietnam War split this country in every bit as much as a civil war.
No, it didn't. We weren't shooting each other. We weren't killing each other.
But
I agree that we were in a polarized time, but it was different.
Generations were in disarray.
Yeah, there was argument on the land. And it still is. You know, when you began the show tonight, talking about it this afternoon, whenever people are listening. With you being in the military, I was not in the military, and I was not in the military as a military choice. I thought patriotism at the time meant to not be in the military, and I feel like as I've gone through life now, one of my pet peeves is that those of us who protested the war are not being given our patriotic credit for thinking that was more patriotic than serving in the war. Now, that in one major way, to me, is bullshit, because I did not put my life on the line any more than the threat of being beaten up in a demonstration. But that's different than lock and load and let's go to war. So that doesn't really compare. They're not equal, and I've made my peace with recognizing that. It was one of the failures of the protesters during the Vietnam era to not recognize that the soldiers, as the police forces are in a political situation, are just as much victims as the people who are the victims of the forces of oppression.
They were drafted. They didn't just join.
Yeah, exactly. They wasn't going like, we agree with all this shit. It didn't matter, because America used to be a place where we had the illusion of trusting our politicians who meant well for the ideals of what the republic was supposed to stand for. All life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness instead of the pursuit of Standard Oil profits.
Did it ever, we were a country founded by slave owners based on imperialism, and what we did to the Native Americans set the tone. Spanish-American War,
Well, you're getting real now. Once you get real, it all falls apart, because there's all the isms disappear, and it's just who has the guns, who has the power.
That's right. That's what's really scary. But getting the word out is a good thing, and it's cathartic, and I'm glad we're able to do that. I'll miss that on radio, the hour a week that our show is produced. Try to make up for it by being more outspoken on podcast.
Let me tell you something that just happened this morning to me. I've become a binge reader in the last 2 weeks. Do you know the author Lee Child, who writes the Jack Reacher books?
No, I don't.
Okay, briefly, Jack Reacher is 6'5" and weighs 250 pounds, and he's an ex-13 years MP in the Army. He's now out of the Army. And the books by Lee Child, there have been 21 of them. All 21 have been bestsellers on the New York Times bestseller list. This is something that I didn't know about at all. I haven't been a fan of this kind of genre and the past mysteries that involve armies and fighting and this and that. Other than I like Bruce Lee movies back when. But anyway, I happened to read one of these books about 12 days ago. And I fucking loved it. And because it was a world I knew nothing about. And the Reacher character is like he's a tough guy's tough guy. So, and his military strategies are brilliant. And I could just go on. One thing triggers another. But the reason I started telling this story is this. I've just finished one of the books. And in the plot line, I've read, it must be, let's see, this is the 8th book I've read in the last 2 weeks. 8 books back to back. I don't ever do this. And they're like 600-page books. So anyway, the plot of this one was a guy who's essentially a military hero. He's a pilot in Vietnam, and he's decorated, and he ends up missing. And he's missing in action. And his parents, now 30 years later, are getting ready to die, and they don't know what happened to their son. And the Army has been stonewalling him and won't give them any answers. Somehow the character Jack Reacher becomes involved, and he's going to help them out and find out the answer. And 600 pages ensue, and he does find the answer. And he's saying this to the parents at the end of the book, of their son. He said he was a hero, you know? The old man nodded. The old man said he did his duty. And Jack Reacher said, no, he did more than that. I read his record. I talked with General DeWitt. He was a brave flyer who did more than his duty. He saved a lot of lives with his courage. If he'd lived, he'd have 3 stars by now. He'd be general with a big command somewhere or a big job in the Pentagon. And after reading 600 pages about getting to this conclusion, I just started crying. I really just laid in bed this morning and I was crying. And it reminded me when I was growing up, before the division, which is where this whole conversation started about Vietnam, I was a John Wayne fan. I was an American fan. I believed the whole thing. And that got taken away from me in the Vietnam era. I was robbed of my opportunity to be for my country in terms of what I thought conventionally I would be, which is World War II. I mean, especially being a Jew. I mean, who the fuck could say no to that war?
Absolutely. That was the war that made us all, as a nation, patriotic.
And it was the citizen army. It wasn't the professional army. That was something else, too, because it was the guy on the street. It was Frank Sinatra singing, The Things We Believe, that famous song from the I guess it was 30s.
That
was America
what
to
it
me.
Also, as a baseball, we're both avid baseball fans. For me, it was, as I look back in the history, Pearl Harbor, you had Bob Feller enlist. You had people, Hank Greenwald re-enlisted.
Hank Greenwald.
It was just instantaneous. The country absolutely rounded around, gathered around the wagons and all that. You had women in the woman with the muscle. What was her name?
Rosie the Riveter.
Rosie the Riveter, right? She worked in a defense plant, and it was a team effort. You had to buy the French women's stockings. Everybody had to save up. It was something. You had to do it. It was all part of it. And chocolates too.
Yeah. My mother was asking my father, "What do you want me to send chocolates for?" She never stopped talking about that after he came home. What were those chocolates for?
Sweet.
And I have to tell you one more story, because you triggered me with stockings. My father owned a gas station, and after the war, he came back and went back to work in his gas station. And a guy came in to the station and opens up the trunk and shows him stockings, and they were still a restricted item 1945 or so, and he said he had 100 pair of stockings, and he was charging a ridiculous price for them. So my dad bought the whole 100, and he comes home so proud of himself and shows my mother the stockings, and he shows her the first pair. Well, there's a runner in it the size of Chicago. They're no good. Every single pair was runnered. It was 100 pairs of garbage. And my mother never let my dad ever forget that. And I'm aware that the family business was to not be very good at business. And I've carried on that tradition.
Hey, you and me, we do what we like in life. We're not on the grid. How do people retire? Can you imagine people just not doing anything in retirement, not pursuing their passion?
Well, I think in some ways I retired in 1984 with the first headline of the heterosexual transmission of AIDS. I was making a good living for about 5 or 6 years. After a 10-year career, I finally kicked in around 5, where I became bankable, as they used to say. But then AIDS came, and my wife said, "Hey, asshole, you just retired." I had new babies at home, and I'd be risking her life and my life and their lives by continuing to have unprotected sex. And we didn't even know about that for a whole year, too, because safe sex wasn't part of the equation until 1986. Anyway, that was my first retirement, and I really haven't recovered from that. Being a writer is like a joke for, I checked for royalties yesterday for the year so far, $54.02. So, I'm not on the New York Times bestseller list.
Yeah. Whoa.
But I'm not retired, is what it is. I feel like my next career hasn't kicked in yet.
Retired, how do people that do retire just turn it off? You're not retired.
They have money. They have enough money. Well, they have enough money to retire, which means what they were doing for all those years, they don't have to do anymore.
What occupies one's mind at that point?
Anything you want. That's freedom. I mean, in some ways, that's the American dream of our generation right there. You put in your time, and you got a nest egg, and you got Social Security, and you travel. You play with the grandkids. You learn how to speak Italian. I mean, whatever the fuck is your fancy. My brother's doing that. He was an eye surgeon and was dedicated. I mean, fucking dedicated. My brother was a serious fellow. I mean, this is Harvard Med School. He ended up 5 years ago at the age of 70 retiring. And he developed a personality. I mean, all of a sudden he's funny and he's silly. My brother was never silly. The grandchildren have turned him into a human being. It's amazing to see what he's done since he stopped having to be the kind of person who was wired tight enough to cut your eye and not take your sight away. So, that's a positive retirement in my view, because he's earned the right to do whatever he wants at this point.
And you have too. Money has nothing to do with it.
Well, I'm still not up to that yet. I mean, I feel that's a place where I want to have a big finish here. I have a model in my mind, an old girlfriend who essentially was a first wife, but we were too cool to get married back then. Her father was a chemist who had been heavily persecuted during the McCarthy hearing eras. He was a former commie in the 30s and stuff, and he made a career as a chemist, but he didn't get to be the big time person in the science he wanted to be. And at the end of his life, he invented some kind of toward the end of his business life, he came up with some pesticide or something that was good for killing rats or this or that without harming people. And he made some money. So I'm looking for a big finish too. I'd like to have one of my books become a movie, or else your show become real popular, and I'll happen to be your sidekick will be Roy, and you can be Roy Rogers, and I'll be Kathy Hayes. Okay, that's
my show. I'm smart enough to make it Lenny Randall's show and just produce it and co-host it. but Lenny Randall's the star. When we have a show, you'll be the star. I'm smart enough.
Nah, we can share the billing. I don't need that anymore. I don't want the star. I just want the money.
All right. Well, if they ask me about a bill, I'll just say I think I paid it. Why don't I just send you the money and we won't have to converse?
Okay.
You got to come up.
That's good with me. I like that.
That's the kind of producer I am. You can imagine what a future it'll be in the Ralph Tycho production world.
That's why
I'm leaving it all to Lenny Randall and Darren Peck of Sports Byline USA.
There you go.
Send me the gelt when it comes, and if it doesn't come, don't send me anything. I'm just having fun doing what I do. It doesn't matter.
Playgirl was going to give me. I was the first guy in Playgirl with an erection, and so they were going to do a poster and a big promotion. And they said, "You're going to get for every poster we sell, you're going to get $1." I said, "Great." You know how much I made on that so far?
No.
Nothing. Nothing. Not a penny.
I told you
Not
get
a penny.
Yeah, sometimes. But you could lie to me. Now, if you promise me stuff, lie to me. It's all right. Make me feel good for the minute. If I don't get, I'll be dead soon anyway.
Well, that was kind of, mild. The other one was being in the porn business. The money was brought to the talent through a series of buffers. So you really didn't know whose money it was. So when you're getting fucked in the porn business, which means they tell you they're going to pay you $500 a day, and then they end up offering you $200 a day for your signature on the model release or whatever, well, you're going to sue them, right? You sure you want to sue the Banana family? I mean, or whatever family might be. I'm not using them as an example. I don't want to cast any aspersions here about the Banana. That's just the first one that occurred to me. But in any case,
I hope you'll listen to interviews that I do with a fellow by the name of Jack O'Halloran, who's written a book about his family. He is the son of Albert Anesthesia.
Oh my God, he was serious.
And he was very, very serious guy.
Yeah.
So maybe the three of us will get on together. Jack's been a terrific guest. So he was a 10th ranked heavyweight boxer.
Wow.
Roman. He didn't win but beat up Norton in his career.
That's serious.
Was a movie star, not a star per se, but he played a role on Superman. He was Superman's foe or whatever it was.
Which Superman? The movies or the TV or what?
In the movie, no.
George Reeves. Steve Reeves.
Remember those? Those were great. That was every afternoon.
Wait, I'm not clear yet. Are we talking about Christopher Reeves or George Reeves?
No, we're talking about
the TV.
The kid in the wheelchair, the actor that ended up in a wheelchair. I guess
that's Christopher Reeve.
That's Christopher. Okay. George
I was
Reeves.
thinking. I got him confused with Steve. Remember Steve Reeves?
Watching on the little black and white screen.
Yeah.
And we didn't know it, but Lois Lane looked good to us. We were just
both of them. There were two of them.
Two Lois Lanes.
Yeah, they were middle of the series. They fired the one and put another one in there. If you go back and see the reruns, you'll see there's two Lois Lanes.
Interesting. Always wondered what a cub reporter was about. That was
Jimmy Olsen.
Jimmy, yes.
Well, that's what about 2 weeks ago when we ended the show.
Caesar's ghost.
Yeah, Perry White. About 2 weeks ago when you ended the show.
A curmudgeon.
Yeah.
I'm 7 and I wanted to be a curmudgeon. I don't know why.
You told me at the end of one of the first shows we did, next week we were going to discuss my career as a sports writer. And I was Jimmy Olsen. I was the cub reporter. I was 18 years old working for a Scripps Howard newspaper as a sports writer. So I had that experience.
Well, let's do this. This has been a good show, and I want to keep that. Let's put that down for next week, and we'll talk about sports writing. How about that? I'll tell you what. Let's record a little thing about being a Cub reporter as a sports writer. I'll record a little thing for the show, the radio show. You and I.
Sure.
Beautiful. Good. And we'll talk about it on the podcast next week. But we'll get together and we'll do what I like to call a tight 10. And we won't curse. We won't say anything bad. We won't politicize in any way.
All right, let me look at something here. Next week is the 18th. No, next is the 5th, the 11th. Okay, good. I'm leaving town for 3 weeks on the 13th, so that would be the week after. But you're talking about the 11th, so I'll do.
Okay. Now you're not being run out of town. I just want clarification on that.
No, I have a mother-in-law who is 98 years young and is on her way out, and a lot of dementia. And the oldest, my sister-in-law, needs to get out of town. She's been doing the primary help with the care, and my wife is her younger sister, and so we need to go and be there for 3 weeks while she gets a vacation. So we'll be first line of defense. And,
you're doing what needs to be done, and
exactly.
I'm sorry you have to go through it, but it's all part of life.
Yeah, I've done it twice with my own parents, so I know the ride.
Yeah. Thank you for being here, sir. Appreciate
Pleasure to meet you.
Howie Gordon.
I wanted to ask you something before we close.
Yes.
You, a couple of times, have referred to me as Howie Rose.
I don't know where that comes from. I could tell you where that comes from. It would have to be off the air. My friend Marty Rose could be that. But Howie Rose, I guess I told you it's on the air, is the Met television announcer. And my best friend growing up, he has a show with me on the New York Mets, along with Robert Cole on this very network, is named Marty Rose. So Howie Rose, Howie Gordon, that's where it comes from.
Okay, I just wanted to. I thought you had struck
Ralph
a new nickname for me.
Typo, Ralph Mark screw up the name-o as well. Not just my typing. And
I like the name. It was a good one. It was a good one.
Howie Rose.
Howie Rose.
It works
brother.
It works for the TV announcer of the New York Mets, Marty and Barney, his brother. It works for them as well. I wish it would work for you. I couldn't convince you to put Gordon down. I feel like Charlie Finley wanted to make Vita Blue True Blue.
I know. Cassidy.
Choose the name. Change his name.
Have you ever met Barry Gifford, by the way?
I haven't.
Barry Gifford is a writer who, good writer, and a good friend from years ago. We were on the same softball team and stuff. He wrote a book called The Neighborhood of Baseball, growing up a Cubs fan. And this was about 25, 30 years ago now. And it was, the Major League Baseball liked it so much, they gave him a lifetime pass to all the games everywhere, which is how they used to honor writers who broke through. So Barry might be an interesting person for you to talk to. And
how about Barry being an interesting person that the three of us could get on the air? That you bring him on.
All right, I'll give him a call. See if he's done some Hollywood movies. Well, I don't know. I'll have to track him down and see if I can get you and all that.
Yeah. You could help in the production of your segments. How about that?
Hey, I used to run the trolley on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood.
We got that to talk about. About that, you could tell the inside story of being a crew member. You actually of dealing with the interaction. I'll just curious because when I was a kid, my mother would take my brother and I down to these kids shows. Maury Amsterdam was a host of one of them, and we'd sit there and basically doing the same thing you did, sitting around, and it was fun times, and I'll bet it was fun for you doing it.
Do you remember 1,000 Clowns, the film and play?
I do. You have to goose the world now and again.
Yeah,
prove that you're a human being, not a chair.
Chuckles the Chipmunk.
Yes.
Why did you quit? Why did you quit? Well, I felt like I wasn't reaching all the kids out there in TV land.
Yeah, that's right. The frustration of an entertainer.
Murray. And Barry Gordon. Barry Gordon played the kid. I always loved that because he had the same name as me.
Same name. Barry Gordon, was he the record producer too?
No. He had a hit record though. When he was 12 years old, he sang "I'm Getting Nothing for Christmas," but he had a hit record.
That Barry Gordon.
Yeah. You'd recognize his face when you saw him. He was a child star that never really blossomed as a grown-up. The record producer was Barry Berry. That was Motown.
Yeah. Oh, okay. That was. I think, if I'm not mistaken, he had something to do with the Shirelles.
Yeah, all those groups, all of Detroit.
Be My Baby, the Ronettes.
Yeah, the do-ron, the do-ron.
All of it. Good days, Barry. Good memories. Thank you, sir.
All right.
I should call you Barry.
Yeah, that's fine.
That's Barry Gordon.
I'm a rose among thorns.
Barry Gordon Rose used to be Howie.
Yeah. There we go. AKA.
AKA.
Hey.
I love talking to you, my friend. Talk soon.
All right.
If you're listening out there, I may wonder why Barry Gordon, Howie Gordon Rose might wonder why. But
don't forget Richard Pacheco. He's here too.
Yes. I want you folks to do us a solid. If you enjoyed any of it, if you enjoy any of the shows on the network, this is serious. Box up some gently used children's books and take them down to Head Start. Kids need to read. They need to develop an imagination. They need to get their noses out of the devices. And most of all, they need to be school ready. They cannot afford to fall behind. It's just the way of it. And the kids that will be benefiting are the kids that really do need the Head Start. Okay? It's like this is real clear. You'll be helping. Box them up. Get a drive going in the neighborhood. Get as many books to these kids as possible. And I'll feel good. Thank you. Thank you again, Howie Gordon.
You're a good man, Gunga Din.
All right. See you soon, friend.
Bye-bye.